People often ask me the story of how it was that I came into serving within the ministry of Passion Life. My wife, my family, and I were living in Asia as long term church planting missionaries in a creative access country over there. One of the things that really stood out to us was the fact that there was an incredibly high infant mortality rate where we lived, comparable to many parts of Africa and some of the places where infant mortality rates are at their very highest throughout the world. We also realized that a lot of what was driving these high infant mortality rates were completely preventable things. For instance, there was a high level of pneumonia because these kids were often being born out in the grasslands in tents in extremely harsh, cold winter environments, and they just didn't have the medical care that they needed for pneumonia and other common colds and diseases, flus, things like that. Another thing that was driving it was there were diseases that were caused by traditions. One of the traditions that was common where we lived was when a baby is born, the neighbors or people around, even family members, would come and spit in the face of the baby to ward off demons. So these were just kind of these unnecessary, unclean health problems that were created that contributed to a high infant mortality rate. There was also a story that really moved our hearts, and the story was that we had met a young man who was a shepherd, a nomad out in the plateaus. During the time that we were getting to know him and his family, he had a young woman that had come into his life that he was considering marrying. So all this took place over an 8 to 12 month period. He met this young lady, he kind of developed a courtship with her, and next thing you know, they're married. We knew, though, that they had become pregnant within their first year of marriage, which is wonderful. They were celebrating that. They were excited about it. And as the time approached for this young lady to give birth, we as a family had to make an exit of the country to have visas renewed. We were gone for about 2 weeks. When we came back, we knew during that 2 week period that she probably should have had the baby. So within several days of arriving back in the country, we made preparations to get in the car and go out into that remote grasslands area to visit the family. And we had gifts for the baby and all kinds of things in tow. As we were on our way out there, we passed the grandmother. This was the father of the young man who married her. She was walking on the road. Her body language she was obviously sad. And we stopped and we asked her, how are you doing? She demurred. How's the baby? Has the baby been born? She just wouldn't talk about it whatsoever. In this particular culture, when someone passes away, you never mention their name again. You burn all pictures that you have of them, and you never mention their name again. That's one of the things that they do culturally to deal with the finality of death, is they just cut the memory of that person out of their lives as best they can. So we could tell by her body language that something grave at least had happened with the baby, and probably that the baby was not living. So we put her in the car. She was not walking toward her house. She was walking toward town, and she was going actually to visit her daughter-in-law at the hospital. So we drove her to the hospital to find out what the story was. We arrived to find out that the young woman had given birth about 4 days prior to our coming back to the village. The baby girl was born healthy and happy, full term, but there was some sort of fluid in the back of the throat. And because that clinic did not have the 50 cent or $1, I don't know what they cost, those simple little suction bulbs that suction mucus and fluid out of the back of the throat, that the young girl had suffocated after she was born, and within a few minutes was pronounced dead. Moreover, the young nomad girl who gave birth uh, gave birth by C-section. And she was informed at the time that they told her that her baby had passed away. She was informed that while they had her open on the table, they had performed a full, it wasn't a hysterectomy, but they had sterilized her because at that point, the country where we were living had a one-child policy. And because this woman had given birth to her full allotment of children that she was allowed to have, they went ahead and sterilized her without asking or telling her that they were doing that to her. So, of course, we grieved with this family that not only had they lost the one baby that they had been looking for so forward to welcoming into the world, but that they had lost all opportunity to have future children. It was one of the reasons we decided as a couple, my wife and I, to begin a nonprofit in that area called Nomad Infant Rescue and Care, what we shortened to NIRC. And we began to raise money for certain services for pregnant women. They were, I would call it perinatal services, pre-birth and post-birth. Part of what we did was we raised money for clothing and blankets and things for kids to have more protection from the cold after they were born. We started mothering classes for young women to learn how to hygienically and culturally care for their babies in a way that would give them the best chance of survival. We had an ambulatory care portion of our foundation that would take women in high-risk pregnancies or people who had complications in labor and would take them either out of the grasslands into the local clinic, or if needed, take them all the way down the mountain into the largest big city that was nearby so that they could receive the best health care available. The hospital where we would take them had agreed to receive those women at a discounted rate because they were affiliated with our nonprofit program. And one of the other arms of what services that we offered was counseling for women who found themselves in difficult circumstances concerning pregnancy, or what we would call a pregnancy-related crisis. They didn't know if they could bring another baby into the world for one reason or another. So we would counsel those women. We would talk with those women to see if we could help find a suitable solution for how we could remove whatever barriers they sense were preventing them from feeling like they had what they needed to be able to give birth and raise that child. Because we were doing this pro-life work, and a pastor friend of mine who was a local indigenous pastor said, "You really need to meet my friend, John Ensor." John is an American man who's traveling through China and and other countries around that part of Asia, and he is teaching biblical pro-life ethics. And you really got to meet this guy. You guys would have a lot in common. So we invited John to come over to our house for dinner, and we got to know him. We were finishing the church planting cycle where we were, and we're moving on to another area, and John asked me to sit on his board. I sat on his board at PassionLife for about 2.5 years before John and I like to say that John fired me from the board because he was looking for an executive director to help him expand the work of PassionLife out into new countries. So he fired me from the board so that I could be hired as the executive director. We went from that one country in 2016 is when I came on staff officially, to 19 countries, more than 19 countries we're working in today. 19, 20, 21 countries actually, in more than 27 different languages. So that's the story of how John Ensor and I met and how I was brought in. Now we've hired more staff around the two of us. The Lord has been so gracious to continue to provide for all of our needs and open doors in places we never thought possible. It's really exciting to see the work of PassionLife growing, and it's because of donors like you that we've been able to answer the call around the world as it has come in The Bible says rescue those who are stumbling toward the slaughter, or staggering toward death. That is what Passion Life exists to do. If that's something that you would like to be a part of, get on the passionlife.org website and sign up to make a monthly gift, even if it's $5. Why do we say make a monthly gift instead of just follow us or sign up for our newsletters? Those are fine things too. Do that. But I believe in the biblical principle that where you invest your treasure, your heart will also be. And if you will invest your treasure, whether it's $5 or $500 a month, to follow along and work with Passion Life as a partner, I believe that you will find that the Lord will incline your heart more and more toward pro-life ministry overseas in the places where abortion, infanticide, and gendercide are most concentrated, and where you are most needed to help intervene. Join our team. We would love to have you come along and see and be a part of what God is doing around the world.